Hello and welcome once again to the Paducah Human Rights Commission show, Raising the Standards. I'm David White. I have with me today my co-host, Shalon Jeter, and our guest today is Miss Mary Ann Taylor with the Kentucky Commission for Human Rights.
Okay, and before we begin the interview with Ms. Taylor, what I would like for you to know is basically what it is that we do. And we at the Paducah Human Rights Commission feel that no one in the state of Kentucky and in the West Kentucky area should be discriminated against, and we handle cases in the Paducah area. If you feel that you've been discriminated against because of your race, your color, your religion, your national origin, or your age, or any disabilities, please don't hesitate to contact our office. Even if you feel that you may have a complaint or not just sure, just please contact us. That's what we're here for. We're here to help you. And David, you want to talk about our guest today, Ms.
Yes.
Taylor? We're so glad to have you.
Miss Mary Ann Taylor is the Supervisor for Education and Outreach for the Kentucky Commission for Human Rights, and so we welcome you today.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us all the way from Louisville.
Yes.
Yay!
Can you tell our audience, because we're just going to assume that some of our audience may not be familiar with the Kentucky Commission for Human Rights, so why don't you just tell us what the Kentucky Commission is, how you're designed, and what specifically you handle and try to address throughout the Commonwealth.
I'd love to. We will start with what I'd like to call Kentucky Commission on Human Rights 101. Basically, of course, as if you've not stepped into our shoes before. We are a statewide agency. We are funded through Kentucky State General Funds, which means your taxpayer dollars pay our salaries. We do also receive some federal funding from HUD, Housing and Urban Development, that handles our housing cases. We also receive federal funding from the EEOC, which is Equal Employment Opportunity. So that would also handle our employment cases as well as our public accommodation cases that we would handle. It also handles education and outreach, which is the department that I serve. So that's how we're funded. That's how your taxpayer dollars pay for my presence here today. That's Kentucky Commission on Human Rights 101. Also, as a state agency, we have jurisdiction in all 120 counties, so we're able to travel the state. There are 3 counties, Jefferson, Lexington, which is Fayette County, and Covington, who have the same structure that we have, which means they have as much jurisdiction as we do. However, we can serve in those counties as well, should there be a conflict of interest and they're not able to investigate a case in that county. We can serve in that county as well as the other counties. So we do have statewide jurisdiction. What a lot of people don't know about us is that we are, like you, a law enforcement agency. There is a Kentucky Civil Rights Act. That is a law. It's a Kentucky revised statute, and we must enforce that law. Therefore, when we rule on a case, then that ruling carries the weight of law, and the only way that you change that ruling is through a court appeal through circuit court. So we do consider ourselves law enforcement agents. We take our jobs very seriously. We take discrimination very seriously, and it does, as you said earlier, come in all forms.
Right.
We consider everyone in Kentucky a precious gem. And at some point in your life, you may fall into one of those protected classes, Commissioner Jeter, that you mentioned. It could be that you're discriminated against because of your race, your gender, your national origin, the color of your skin, your age, if you happen to be over 40, maybe because you're a smoker, maybe because you have a disability. It could be because of your religion, the religion that you practice, or maybe a religion that you don't practice. In the area of fair housing, those same protected classes apply. We believe that everyone should have the opportunity to live wherever they want to live. So fair housing is a huge, huge project that we undertake. And we believe that everyone has the right to live where they want to live in the state of Kentucky, here in western Kentucky, eastern Kentucky, wherever. And then in places of public accommodation, whether that's Walmart, whether it's the Dollar General store, whether it's your doctor's office. You are protected where you go to spend your dollar.
And you mentioned something, whether you're a smoker.
Absolutely.
I've never heard of that.
Absolutely. For a while, Kentucky used to be the only state where smokers were a protected class because, as you may or may not know, for a while, Kentucky's major cash crop was tobacco. And because of insurance premiums, some employers did not want to take on that additional cost.
Okay, yeah.
However, what you do is what you do.
So that's found in state law.
Correct. So smokers were protected. Now, that does not have anything to do with the actual facility.
Yes.
Okay.
We are a smoke-free state, and we
Yes.
have
Yeah.
smoke-free facilities. That in itself is quite different than what that person does, you know, with their health and smoking. So, yes. Now there are, I think, over 20 states where a smoker is a protected class of people.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Similar, though, to our local commission, you mentioned employment, housing, and also public accommodations. And public accommodations, anywhere people would be free to come or go to do business.
That is not a private-owned club.
That's not a private-owned
okay.
club.
Correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
And I'm sorry, what is your complaint process? I mean, I know how ours is. Is yours different than ours?
It is in that we can follow through to the end point of litigating a case. There are what we call local commissions out in the state, and we have 24. Paducah Human Rights Commission happens to be one of them. On the state level, just like with you, we will get a phone call, we may get an email, we may have someone walk into the office that says, I feel that discrimination occurred on my job. I feel that it occurred in this place of public accommodation. My landlord won't put a ramp in for me. I'm disabled. I think a discrimination occurred. And we will listen to their complaint. We will take what some folks may determine to be a massive amount of paperwork. It's actually a minimum amount of paperwork. We'll get their information. We will make a determination that enough evidence exists at that point that we think there may be something there. At that point, we will file the paperwork appropriately. That means what needs to go to EEOC or to HUD goes there. We have what we need in our office to literally put it in the computer and get the process started. A filed complaint will be served to the appropriate parties. If it is an employment case, if it is a public accommodation case, then there's an opportunity for mediation. Now, on the state level and here on the local level, those processes are very much the same. The beauty of the local commission is most of the time it can stop at the mediation point. You guys can stop it before it goes any further. Often we can stop things at the mediation point. Our mediator is wonderful. She is able to take care of many, many cases right there. Mediation is confidential, so we don't know what the outcome is. We don't know who says what. We don't know what settlements may or may not occur at that point. However, in our process, should one party or decide they don't want to mediate, at that point it goes to investigation. Once it gets to the investigative phase, then we have a team of enforcement officers. It's assigned to an enforcement officer who does a thorough investigation. That means calling witnesses, sometimes performing on-site visits, talking to people, reviewing cases, reviewing records, subpoenaing a record if necessary. After that phase is complete, sometimes there is the opportunity to go back again for mediation. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes folks will just withdraw and decide to get a private attorney and sue. Sometimes folks will just withdraw because they just had enough. Sometimes the investigator will say, you know what, we've got enough, we're going to take it to our legal team because at this point we know it's time to litigate. That is different from local commissions because some local commissions just don't have the manpower nor the resources financially to take it to that point.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They
it is
also
difficult.
don't have the authority from their city ordinance to take it to that point.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's the difference.
Let me ask this, how receptive are the parties in mediation? How many complaints would you say offhand go to mediation? How receptive are both sides to say, yeah, we're willing to at least entertain mediation and come to the table?
It just depends. It really just depends. Some of your larger corporations are not often receptive because they have the resources to fight it, and they know that they can hold up processes for a long, long time. and that often a complainant will just give up rather than to hold out and fight it. Some of your smaller individuals, smaller companies, small realtors who maybe only have 4 or 5 properties that don't have a lot of fiscal resources to hang on for years, would rather just come to the table right away and say, can we just settle this? I don't have statistics with me to just give you a number and say 50%,
Sure.
60%, and I wouldn't want to give you incorrect numbers. But I do know that your larger corporations, and I'm not at liberty to tell you which ones,
Right.
Oh, come on.
can't.
Well, now let me ask this
Can't.
too. You had mentioned that they drag on for a while, and so people really do. If they file a complaint, it needs to, one, be a serious nature, but they need to be willing to fight that fight if when they step up, I guess, to say,
We have
because it doesn't happen quickly.
Yes, we do have a well-trained intake officer, and that's your first point of contact with us. And she is very good at letting folks know, this is not a quick process. It can be quick in that we can let you know immediately that this is not a quick process. There's paperwork involved. There's a response period. Legally, there's a response period. We have to allow the respondent time to get information to us. You have to allow the investigator time to review it. There are time frames allowed. There are legal time frames allowed. And then there's, you've got to find your witnesses. Sometimes your witnesses move. Sometimes they're reluctant. Sometimes they're concerned about retaliation. Sometimes they don't want to be involved. Someone that you think is a good witness will decide they don't want to do that because they're afraid.
Sure, sure.
So it can take time. Some cases can be solved in 3 to 6 months. Some cases can be solved in 3 to 6 years. Some cases can go 6 years and come away with a large settlement. Some cases can go 4 years and end up with no probable cause, meaning that we just don't have enough evidence to substantiate that the discrimination took place. Not that we don't think something happened.
Right, right.
It's just we don't have the evidence to substantiate it.
Now, you had separated you have investigators, and then the commission itself hears the final complaint, the investigation. The other side gets to come in and introduce evidence and everything similar to a trial. Could you walk us through that process?
That would be the hearing process. Once an investigation is complete, one of 2 things is going to happen. The investigator is going to make a determination that there's no probable cause. As I said, there's not enough evidence to substantiate that the discrimination occurred. It's going to be written up as such, no probable cause. Or it's going to be sent to our legal team to pursue litigation up to a hearing. Usually before that hearing takes place, there will be a conciliation process. Our commissioners, there are 11 commissioners. They're appointed by the governor. 6 of them come from the Supreme Court districts, and then the other 5 are at large, which means they represent the state at large. They are all trained as hearing officers. That is something that we've talked about with your individual local commissions. They are trained hearing officers. Should it get to that point, then that mimics a court. And then that commissioner for that area sits as the hearing officer, and then they determine what the damages are. And they determine yay or nay and damages. And that can be hefty.
Well, that's good for the community to know, because although we're the local community and sometimes our hands are tied, but we can forward the complaint onto you guys.
Correct.
And you guys can handle it.
Now, the other thing that you should know is that all of those cases, however, are written up. Most of the time it's handled at the conciliatory state. It doesn't get to the hearing stage. And once a month, our commissioners meet, and that's mandatory, that's statutory, that they meet monthly, and they vote on the cases. And they say yay or nay, we accept what your enforcement officers have put before us. So it's quite possible that the commissioner that represents Western Kentucky could look at a case from Paducah and say, I have questions and I need for you to pull that case and go back and maybe rework that case, look at it another month, would you please investigate it just a little further? And that has happened, and we are accountable to those commissioners that represent that area.
Okay.
And they can pull a case and ask us to look at it and reinvestigate it or do something else. And we have done that in the past because our obligation is to satisfy them. And then they have the final say, and they have the final vote. They do vote on those cases. Once they vote on those cases, that becomes public record. And your commission is notified of that through press release every month at the end of the commission meeting that all the cases were voted upon and approved by the commissioners. So that's also a major difference.
Are those available on the website too?
They are. There's well, not case by case by case. You could call us and ask for that, but the press release that says, yes, all cases were voted upon today and passed or not passed, that is on the website.
And just
every month.
for our viewers, what is the website?
The website is www.kchr.ky.gov, G-O-V.
Well, I have a question. As far as a trend, have you noticed a trend in, I guess, the complaints that have come lately?
Yes.
Like within the last few years?
The trend that we are seeing lately, and no trend is a good thing, but the reason that we're having the trend is a good thing, is in housing cases. We are seeing an increase in housing cases, and we're seeing an increase in disability housing cases. Now, the reason that that's a good thing is because we were awarded a housing grant a year ago, and we've made a concerted effort to get out statewide and push housing.
Wonderful.
So the work that we've done over the past year, we're seeing pay off in terms of the number of housing phone calls that we get, whether they're jurisdictional or not.
Right.
The phone calls are coming in and the phone calls are increasing, and we're actually filing more housing cases than ever. So that's a huge, huge plus to the housing campaign. But the trend that we're seeing on the increase is disability housing cases. So, yeah, we are.
Let's switch gears just for a minute, because one of the interesting things that I found in looking at your website is you have a Hall of Fame.
Oh, yes.
Yes, we do. We do have a Hall of Fame, and we have a gallery of great Black Kentuckians. And both of those entities were created because in studying the history of civil rights in Kentucky, we noticed that a significant portion of history was left out of Kentucky textbooks, and that being a history of civil rights and a history of African Americans in Kentucky. So the Kentucky Commission on Human Rights took it upon themselves to create that history for students. The Kentucky Commission on Human Rights Hall of Fame began in the year 2000. We are now at the point of inducting folks every 2 years. We had our last induction ceremony in 2012. We have 122 inductees. We do have our application online. We ask that folks, they don't necessarily have to live here now, but they at least have made major contributions to Kentucky in the area of civil rights and having had, something to do with one of those protected classes that we've been talking about throughout the segment. So you can always download that form. You can submit it at any time.
Okay.
So our next induction ceremony would be in the year 2014. That's the Hall of Fame. We also have the Gallery of Great Black Kentuckians, and the criteria is that you be an African American person who's also made significant contributions to the state of Kentucky. We try to induct at least 2 a year. We are up to 55 at this point. Those folks have a poster. There's a poster series. We used to have bookmarks to go with those posters. We've just started reprinting bookmarks to accompany those posters, and those are sent out to schools. You can call and request them. It's no cost to call and request those materials. So that's our 2 educational initiatives that we're able to send out to folks when they call and ask.
That is nice to know.
And all of that is on our website too. You can click, download. Another great educational initiative that we're sending out that's free, that's also on our website, or you can get a hard copy, is the Fair Housing Activity Fair Housing Initiative activity book, and it's a great book. It's an activity/coloring book, and it details the history of fair housing in Kentucky, and there's a lot of legends in that book, living and deceased, just people that you know. You may open that book and see somebody from Paducah that you recognize in there. So it's a great activity book. It's about a 4th, 5th grade level book. There are a few pages that even your kindergartner or 1st grader can color. And then there's some hefty pages for your 4th and 5th graders to work on.
That's impressive.
Well, and that kind of leads us into, you are the supervisor for education and outreach. So what other initiatives have you got going?
For education and outreach, in addition to the fair housing initiatives, we're working on more fair housing campaigns. We're working on getting some fair housing signage out all over the state. That's kind of how we're wanting to end this year of grant funding, is making sure that we've got signs in Western Kentucky, signage in Eastern Kentucky and Northern Kentucky and South Central Kentucky, in the heart of Louisville. That's kind of how we're going to end the fair housing piece. We train. I know one of the things we wanted to talk about are ways that we work best with our local commissions, but we don't just train local commissions. We also, you know, we talked about those conciliations. One of the major pieces that comes out of all conciliation agreements is training. An organization or an entity can't get better if they don't know how to get better. So we always include training as part of a conciliation agreement. They don't have to use us, but we're probably one of the most knowledgeable teams in town. So we do train, and that's a huge education initiative. We train in sexual harassment, we train in cultural competency, we train in basic cultural diversity, we do workshops on housing and fair housing, we do the fair housing compliance training, we do a session on police community relations. So that's a big deal from the education and outreach standpoint. Pretty much if you ask us for it, if we don't have it, we'll develop it for you.
How long generally, or I guess if I'm a private business owner and I would like you to come in and do a training for my management staff or for all of my employees, how far in advance should they ask for that? Is it normally like a whole day training, half day, or what do you normally do?
I would like for you to give us at least a month, depending on whether it's something that we already have prepared and can easily get to you, or if it's something that we need to customize for you. That's why we like about a month in advance. And as far as how much training you need, it depends on whether it's voluntary or mandatory. When I leave here tonight, tomorrow I have a fair housing compliance training that's mandatory. So they have an 8-hour day. They had no choice. So we have to give them 8 hours of training. However, next week I have a training that's voluntary, but they only need 2 hours because it doesn't take all day to tell them what they need to know.
Sure.
But even with those trainings, the training I went to that you conducted, I thought it was informative and fun. So it wasn't 8 hours of boardom. So I thought they were really good.
There are ways to make it interesting. And here's a key example. We're doing a housing training, and we're doing it at a housing complex. And so very simply, I say, well, let me see one of your units. You got an empty unit? Well, let's do a walkthrough. And so it's easier for me to walk through and say, if I'm in a wheelchair, I can't open this door. It's much easier for me to walk through an apartment and say, I can't open this door than it is for me to stand in front of a screen and say, your door handle should look like this. It's just much easier to say, can you grab me a wheelchair? Let's walk your apartment complex and let me ride in the wheelchair on the way. And it kind of breaks the monotony. It's a really good icebreaker, and it also kind of puts folks on the spot like, did she really ask for a wheelchair? And I'm like, yes, I really did, because you have residents that have needs. And this is the easiest way that I can help you understand what a reasonable accommodation looks like.
And how can we, on the local level, how can we work closely with the state level?
Watch our website.
Okay.
Watch it a lot. Anytime you see the word survey, take it. Now don't you take the same survey 10 times, but encourage folks to take it. For instance, we have a disability survey on our website. It's a housing disability survey. That would be a great thing to do. Or it's a facility disability survey. And basically, any high school student can get on there and say, I went to Payless Shoe Store, and if I was a disabled person, I couldn't get in the door. Or I went to my local government building, and it's a wonderful place. It's accessible.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about 10 questions, and they're very simple. Yes, no questions. Could you get in? You know, kind of questions.
Mhm.
Could you find the accessible door? And that's all we really want to know.
Right.
So to stay on our website, to stay informed, the best way to work with us is to call us. We have 1-800 numbers. I don't know it because I always give people my card. But the best way that you can work with us is to communicate with us. We love to take phone calls. I mean, that we
Okay.
have folks we pay to answer the phone. Your taxpayer dollars pay for someone to sit at that desk and take your call.
Right.
Call us.
Well, I appreciate you coming, Miss Mary Ann Taylor. She's with the
Thank
state
you.
level of the Kentucky Human Rights Commission. We've run out of time. We
Okay.
have definitely enjoyed you. If you need any more information about Mrs. Taylor, it's on our website, and I think it's on your screen as well. And Commissioner David White, and I am Shaline Jeter. Thank you for tuning in, and come back again to Raising the Standard.